As of right now, Kari Lake is serving as the senior advisor to the US Agency for Global Media and has announced that Voice of America, or whatever is left of it, is going to be doing a partnership with One America News Network. Yes, OAN, the knockoff of Fox News is going to be working with Voice of America, which means that the American government presumably will be directly financing right-wing propaganda going around the world, which is exciting. But let's work through this piece by piece. So the US AGM is an independent agency that oversees several publicly funded international news networks. Voice of America is perhaps the best known, but Radio Free Europe is another one, Middle East Broadcasting Networks, and there are others as well. Now, I made a joke about this earlier, but in March, Trump ordered the dismantling of the US AGM through an executive order. And so I don't know long term what will remain for Kari Lake to mismanage, but as of right now, she's still in charge of it. And Voice of America broadcasts news content in 48 languages. It's been aimed at a bunch of different international audiences. It's one of the components of American soft power, a way that we get our message out there. And so there has always obviously been some element of propaganda or something adjacent to propaganda from it. I feel like One America News Network is taking a big leap in that direction, or maybe right off a cliff, because they have been wildly right-wing, wildly pro-Trump. They actually ended up having to settle lawsuits based on their coverage of Trump's claims of election fraud in 2020. And to give you an idea of exactly what they're like, don't just take it from me, here's a sample of their work.
President Trump's tariff war is taking the world by storm, and scores of countries are lining up to begin negotiations. Here's One America's Pearson Sharp.
They said he wouldn't do it. The tariffs were just campaign noise, that no one in Washington had the guts. Well, Trump did it. And now the same people who begged for tariffs on China for decades are panicking because the man who actually delivered is Donald Trump. And despite the worst predictions of the Democrats, Wall Street is booming, exploding nearly 10% from a surge in overseas buyers, which proves Trump's strategy is working.
I don't think he understands what an explosion is or what it does to the thing that exploded. It hasn't worked out exactly that way. Also, I feel like I'm being punked. That could not have been the actual correspondent they went to. That was definitely a satirical Daily Show segment. That had to be. Not only the background, but his delivery. That's not a real person, that's a character. But anyway.
They said he couldn't do it, but he did. A new Cadillac for $5,000 off. And if you rush right away, you can get to George's Chevrolet and get one yourself.
That was pretty good. And I have to say that of your comedy, I prefer the Cadillac stuff to the labia stuff. But anyway, yeah, no, that was ridiculous. I mean, but that's what OAN is. From the very beginning, it's like, what if you took like some college Republicans, aged them up 5 to 10 years, and gave them even more unearned confidence and money? Not like a lot of money, not like enough money to make it look like a real news network, but something, you know? I've always been fascinated by the fact that OAN's like lower thirds are dog crap. They look like they just downloaded Photoshop. But anyway, I guess the joke is on us, David, because you and we're just broadcasting. I was gonna say to the US, I guess technically this is international too, but we're certainly not gonna be on Voice of America. And that sort of content will be, which is theoretically, that's consequential. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, and to get serious for a moment, I mean, the history of Voice of America, particularly during the Cold War, it was beamed into a lot of communist nations. And for a lot of people who were hearing it, they were flabbergasted, and it made America seem even more amazing to hear criticism of the US government by US broadcasters. It wasn't always criticism, but it was fairly straight reporting that Voice of America and Radio Free Europe were delivering all around the world. And that was part of, I think, the advantages, never mind the information that was being transmitted, but it essentially planted a seed with people around the world that American democracy and freedom is special. It's so special that we can even have broadcasters paid for by our government who are criticizing policies or decisions that are made by our leaders. That's gone. Now, what people are going to hear around the world is nothing but North Korean style propaganda that marches in lockstep with dear leader. Well, that's not going to make American democracy and freedom seem very special at all. A lot of people around the world who hear this are going to think, this is ridiculous. I can just, what has the United States become? It has become North Korea in terms of its media, and that's a tragic loss.
Yeah, I just want to read a few more of these graphics about it. Kari Lake says, US AGM is excited to announce a partnership with OAN. I reached out to OAN and they offer to provide their news feed and video service free of charge, which of course they did. That's market value. It's not worth anything. How would you actually charge anything for it? But yeah, of course, this gives them international reach. But as much as I do think that this is propagandistic, I think it's ridiculous. And by the way, she's making clear that this was her idea, that she reached out to them. Okay, you're gonna reach out to TYT, or are you gonna reach, again, the idea that there would be any kind of balance is utterly impossible. But I'm almost glad that she went with OAN, because let's say they hadn't tried to fire, and right now basically everybody at Voice of America is on indefinite leave. Let's say they hadn't done that. And what they'd done is, over the course of a year or two, they just gradually replaced everyone with right-wingers. Then that might end up being effective propaganda. But OAN is so over the top, so comical, so clownish, that I just have to imagine that most people will tune out around the world. Now, there's an opportunity cost to that. Instead of them actually getting information, they're probably not gonna tune in at all. But I have a hard time believing that this is going to be effective. I feel like OAN is bottom feeder right-wing content. It makes Fox News look sophisticated. And so, I don't know, maybe this is copium for my part. What do you make of that?
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, it's certainly not subtle what the Trump administration has done and what OAN stands for. And to your point, if they had gradually slid in some people and made it sort of more right wing and tilted towards pro-Trump, a lot of us might not have noticed. And perhaps they might have been more effective in sort of avoiding the laughing stock that Voice of America has now become. And just as we like to laugh, or I like to laugh when I look at North Korean news broadcasts, or I find the old clips of Baghdad Bob, the Minister of Information in Iraq during the Second Gulf War, and his crazy stuff about the Americans, we are slaughtering them, and then the Americans are right behind him in a shot. I mean, that was epic humor. That is what America is now exporting, is that people are going to keep laughing at Donald Trump, laughing at Americans because this is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I wonder, which was the more on its face ridiculous propaganda? Baghdad Bob saying that they're repelling the Americans, or that guy talking about the stock market as $5 trillion evaporates?
They said he couldn't do it, and he did. And you can get another Chevrolet if you walk down the street and present this gold coin. Or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know who that guy's name is, and I don't care. They didn't say that he couldn't do it. They said that he shouldn't do it, and he shouldn't have. But anyway, we do have a poll on this, TYT.com/polls. Do you think we should be funding Voice of America? And I know some people might think that it never should have been a thing that the US was involved in. Interestingly, right now, that is a 50-50 poll. I haven't seen a 50-50 poll on the website. So that's interesting. Look, maybe it could be reconstituted someday as an actual service to America, to the world. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like we'll be funding it much, at the very least, since they sapped everybody.
If our foreign policy is isolationist and bring the troops home and America first, then maybe we shouldn't. Maybe the Trump administration, to be intellectually consistent, should say we're not going to bother. Just as we haven't bothered investing in diplomacy across the board, we're not going to bother in any sort of soft power now. Let's just save our money completely and not broadcast anything. I would actually prefer that.
Yeah, well, it might come to that.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.